After the mercenaries cleaned up the long-abandoned village, they left a few seemingly sturdy houses for the researchers from Gaggle Company to rest when needed. The empty wooden house only had a fresh red cherry tomato on a white porcelain plate that stood out in front of Michael. He stared at the fruit and muttered, "No seeds, no seeds." As a vice president of a food company, Michael knew well that without seeds, there was no way to improve this plant variety, and cultivation was impossible. Among the myriad thoughts that appeared in his head, Michael grasped the most feasible one. Despite his disbelief, his thoughts returned to the memories of 10 years ago. The period when Michael was first fortunate to be transferred inside the tower and awaken his abilities while still wearing a vest on his way home from work. The young man of that day chose to be a swordsman with the typical bewilderment of someone who only specialized in office paperwork, now having to choose to fight and team up with people he didn't even know. Over time, he gradually got used to the rhythm of life inside the tower. However, throughout his time as a warrior and struggling through the floors, Michael knew that his young eyes had always dreamed of seeing the vast and fertile lands inside the mysterious tower. A place with a mild climate, lush green plants, and a never-setting sun. Michael found many areas with soft, moist, loose soil, achieving excellent quality for sowing various seeds. The young man then joyfully looked at the handful of soil in his hand, realizing that if he could grow crops inside the tower, contributing to the global food market would no longer be a distant dream. But that was before it happened. When he became a warrior of a certain level, Michael was allowed to leave the tower whenever he wanted. The first time he returned to America, the young man went to the company to meet his father to persuade him to invest in his idea. Everything was easy and smooth at that time. His father's nod made everything seem bright and full of hope. And that was also the beginning of the crop cultivation project inside the tower, with all kinds of fertilizers, seeds, and conditions brought in from outside. Thanks to the capital from his father, Michael had enough manpower to support his plan. But an unwanted problem appeared. For months on end, the fertile land did not produce any plants or grass. Why was that? Michael crawled on the ground and yelled, "Why isn't any seed sprouting?" He couldn't accept that he had put so much effort and money into this but couldn't harvest anything. In addition to thousands of different seeds tried over and over again throughout the year, Michael also tried to create the best environment for the seeds to sprout. So why didn't a single seed sprout, oh God? After a while, the national broadcasting station reported that there were research results showing that awakened people could lose their abilities as soon as they set foot in the tower. This was considered a side effect of suddenly having to take in a large amount of mana, and most of the individual's productivity could only be recovered when the awakened person passed the 10th floor. The news not only shocked Michael but also shocked everyone watching. Because everyone knew that the first 10 floors were where all kinds of chickens were born. To climb all 10 floors and regain full capacity was not easy. But what Michael cared about most was that even the trees and plants were suffering the same fate. Their reproductive abilities were significantly reduced. There was no way to make the seeds brought in from outside absorb the properties of the seeds already in the tower. So Michael spent time asking traveling merchants to find a different solution to the problem. He thought he could use the seeds of the crops inside the tower and upgrade them. He thought seeds were widely sold like food and drink. The merchant was surprised and asked, "You mean seeds?" "I can't sell that. It's exclusively owned by a guy named Grid on the 55th floor." The news was a huge shock to Michael, because at that time he was just a new player and could only get to the 10th floor. Because he had spent too much money without getting results, gradually Michael was seen as a useless and incompetent boy in his father's eyes, and suffered the coldness of the company's board of directors for a long time. With no other way, Michael had to blame all his failures on his youth and lack of experience. Standing in front of the towering tower that reached the sky and was darker than a dog's poop, Michael saw his dream of farming inside the tower completely collapse under his feet. But he never gave up. Clearly 10 years later Michael was sitting in front of a tomato and muttering, he couldn't let things turn out like this. Suddenly standing up, he immediately ordered the employees sitting at the other table to wait. "You guys bring all the hunters to the 38th floor for me quickly." They still didn't understand what was going on. Michael rushed over and put a big heavy bag on the wooden table, attracting the attention of everyone present. His face was full of determination. Now he didn't care how much money he would lose in this project. Then he ordered everyone go buy all the D-level magic tomato seeds from that traveling cat merchant and bring them back to me. Complete this task at all costs. Looking at the failed tomato in his hand, Michael planned that if the E-level was not successful, he would try to stack D-level magic tomato seeds to see what the result would be. Perhaps the result will be completely different when using seeds from a higher-ranked fruit. Michael's heart was lit with hope again. Through the failed tomato crushed in his hand, he suddenly felt his heart burning with the fire of youth. This time Michael must have the D-level tomato in his hand. All the old dreams that he couldn't do, now he will prove that he is fully capable of completing it. Theo the cat leisurely walked on the forest road leading to Sejun's prehistoric cave. Theo didn't know how many people were lurking waiting for him to come back here again. Suddenly, Theo saw a lot of long green leaves falling on the ground. Theo was surprised to move closer and pick it up. Isn't this the onion leaf that Mr. Sejun is planting? Why is it here? Theo thought it was blown away by the wind, so he stepped back and picked up each stalk one by one into a small bunch in his hand. Always looking at his steps, his eyes didn't notice, so he bumped his head into a black object in front of him. The Minotaur, enjoying the sweet taste of the onion leaves, was not happy to turn his head to look at the person who just disturbed his meal. Theo rubbed his head. He tried to look up but couldn't see the shape of anyone until the Minotaur looked up and asked, "Is it the traveling cat merchant?" Pointing straight at the Minotaur's face, Theo questioned, "Hey you, where did you get what you're chewing?" It didn't understand why a cat was asking it where it got the grass, but still pointed in the distance and said that he saw it left on the ground, so he picked it up. Theo angrily shouted, "You are a liar." Theo showed his claws and pointed straight at the bull's face and cursed. "Do you know that those are the precious leaves that Mr. Sejun always cherishes? It's impossible for them to be forgotten on the ground, meow." Theo continued, "In our cave, we can use the leaves as bowls to hold food, even tie them together to make rope. Those are all precious leaves that are occasionally used to wipe after using the restroom. Do you understand? How dare you steal the precious leaves?" The Minotaur heard the cat suddenly pointing at him and cursing continuously, even though he didn't understand what was happening. No matter what, he couldn't accept being called a thief. Then he went crazy, slamming his hand hard on the ground, causing it to crack like a spider web. Then the Minotaur roared, "Are you calling a warrior like me a thief? One of those who live and die in honor like me? A warrior like me stealing? I will not forgive you even if you are a traveling cat merchant if you dare to insult the warrior that is me." The sound of the bull roaring echoed, and its mountain-like figure cast a shadow over the small cat, causing Theo to dig his 4 legs into the ground. But he bravely shouted back, "Meow, I'm not lying." As if empowered by his own words, he stood up again and pointed at the bull's face. "Let's go ask Mr. Sejun, to see who is right and who is wrong, meow." The bull also wanted to know who the person Theo said was the owner of the grass he had eaten deliciously was, so he agreed to follow him. Theo the cat walked ahead like a professional guide, loudly saying, "Come with me." So the bigger bull had to try to slow down to keep up with Theo's pace. His eyes stared intently at the cat in front. He guessed that the person named Park Sejun had thrown away that bunch of grass, no longer needed it. If not, why would such delicious grass be scattered on the temple ground? Thinking about the scene where the initial commander ordered him to find the location of the grass, now the commander will surely praise him for finding the planter, probably continue to praise him. The bull's eyes sparkled in anticipation of meeting Park Sejun, but he didn't know, this time was considered night, so the young man Sejun was snoring soundly like every day. Theo's loud shout from above, "Director, Chairman, 1, 2, 3, 4, made the water drooling from his mouth stop. Before he could wake up, Theo's chubby body jumped straight onto the belly of the kind farmer, making Sejun think he had just been kicked from above and hit him. He held his stomach and groaned, writhing on the ground. And Theo kept urging him on. "Now is not the time to lie rolling on the ground, sir, you have to follow me out quickly, meow." "So, what's the matter?" Sejun endured the pain, still holding his stomach lying on the ground, but turned to ask Theo what was so serious. As if just waiting to be asked, his face full of pride, he put his hand on his chest and said proudly, "I just caught a thief. Meow." "Huh, steal what? We didn't lose anything, did we?" Sejun was confused but still followed Theo up the rope. Just as he poked his head out of the cave, a dark shadow suddenly fell on his head. The staring eyes full of intimidation made Sejun scared. His face was gray, his mouth stuttered, Theo, is this the thief you're talking about?" Theo, standing proudly on Sejun's shoulder, knew no fear. Jumping from Sejun's shoulder to the ground, he immediately pointed at the bull and said, "That's it, sir, hurry up and catch it." Seeing Sejun standing dumbfounded, the cat had to pick up the pile of onion leaves himself and give them to Sejun to understand. "Look here, this black bull has stolen your grass, meow." At this point, Sejun began to understand the situation. Sejun held the wilted onion leaf in Theo's hand and said, "Isn't this the onion I spread on the sweet potato field?" The bull quickly spoke up to explain, "I only picked it up from the ground." "Anyway, you didn't throw it away. How could such delicious grass suddenly fall all over the ground?" The system helped Sejun identify this as a black bull, making him realize that this seemed to be the guy who was hinting at something the night before. It was the group that had turned his well-cultivated field into a mess after the Blue Moon night, and also stole all the corn leaves that he had spread on the ground a few days ago. Surely this bull was caught red-handed stealing onion leaves today. Sejun said nothing. He stood and watched as the bull tried to explain for the honor of a warrior, there was no way he could be accused of robbing others. Theo is not a simple creature. With Sejun here, he criticizes even more fiercely. "Our master did not throw away the grass, you stole it." Meanwhile, Sejun was still pondering, after all, a bull is also a bull, just walking on two legs. I wonder if they can plow, dig the ground? Suddenly Theo interrupted his train of thought and urged Sejun to quickly tell this fool whether he had thrown away the grass or not. The poor bull turned pale when Sejun said, "No, of course I didn't do that. Those are all precious grasses used to cover the ground, to keep the moisture for the field." Immediately the fierce look just now disappeared. The bull was embarrassed to apologize. "I didn't mean to steal it, because I didn't know that." But Sejun didn't care about the bull's embarrassment. He crossed his arms and casually said, "What's the use of saying these words after stealing?" Extending his guilty hand towards the foolish bull, Sejun bluntly demanded 100 tower coins. "I want to be compensated 100 tower coins for the mess you made in the field and for stealing my grass. Everyone will eventually be squeezed dry by cunning Sejun. I wonder where this bull will get the money to pay Sejun." Thank you for taking the time to watch the video on my channel. Please leave a comment if you like this series and want me to make the next part as soon as possible. Thank you and see you in the next video.